Are You Afraid of the Dark began with a simple but dangerous question. What if you made a horror anthology for kids and didn't hold back when it came to actually scaring them? Across 3 decades, multiple revivals, and a rotating cast of campfire narrators called the Midnight Society, the answer to that question turned into one of the defining cult shows of 90s TV. Are You Afraid of the Dark is a Canadian horror anthology series created by DJ McHale and Ned Candle and co-produced by Montreal-based Cinar Films and Nickelodeon. The idea for the show started as a project called Scary Tales, which would present more like a set of direct-to-video specials with a man telling dark fairy tales. Nickelodeon balked at the straight horror title and tone though, and they pushed for something that sounded more in line with their brand. McHale remembered a Dr. Seuss story called What Was I Scared Of? And then reworked the concept into Are You Afraid of the Dark, with relatable kids telling scary stories to each other instead of an adult narrator. Nickelodeon was nervous about the horror elements. Executives worried about complaints from parents and the optics of frightening younger viewers, so Nickelodeon pitched a compromise. And that was, many of the stories would have to be based on classic literature and public domain tales, like W.W. Jacobs' The Monkey's Paw, which was adapted as The Tale of the Twisted Claw, anchoring episodes in recognizable literary antecedents, and giving most stories some kind of emotional or moral resolution also helped sell the idea that fear was more than just the gimmick the show was using. A pilot called The Tale of the Twisted Claw aired on Nickelodeon as a Halloween special on October 25th of 1991. It tested well enough that the show was picked up to series. It officially premiered as part of Nickelodeon's Saturday Night Snick block on August 15th, 1992 in the US, with Canadian premieres following on Family Channel and later YTV. The original run lasted 5 seasons and it ended on February 3rd, 1996, but that wouldn't be the last time the campfire was lit. The core device of Are You Afraid of the Dark is the Midnight Society. They're a group of teenagers who sneak into the woods at night to tell each other scary stories. Every episode begins the same way. The members arrive at a secret clearing, banter amongst themselves, and then eventually a chosen storyteller steps forward. They carry a leather pouch of midnight dust, which is in reality just non-dairy creamer, which they toss into the campfire as they say the show's most iconic line, submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society. I call this story The Tale of...
Submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society. I call this story Tale of the Prom Queen.
And then the flames would flare up and the pale smoke rises, which transition us into the episode's self-contained horror story. McHale wrote Submitted for the Approval of as a direct nod to Rod Serling's introductions on The Twilight Zone, which on occasion would include the phrase submitted for your approval, explicitly positioning Are You Afraid of the Dark as a kid-sized Twilight Zone. The Midnight Society sections were filmed efficiently. All of Season 1's campfire scenes were shot in about 5 days at the start of production, with McHale writing the majority of those linking segments. That allowed the crew to focus most of their time and budget on the standalone tales within the episodes, while the framing device of the Midnight Society kept the anthology feeling a bit more cohesive. At the end of each episode, after the story concludes, we cut back to the clearing. One member, usually Gary in the original run, and then later Tucker, throws a red bucket of water onto the fire and then says, "I declare this meeting of the Midnight Society closed."
I declare this meeting of the Midnight Society closed. Pleasant dreams, everyone.
Sending everyone running off into the dark. Occasionally, the wraparound ties directly back into the episode's themes, like Kristen's fear of clowns and The Tale of Laughing in the Dark, where a prank with a clown mask sends her fleeing and the group scrambling behind her. If you zoom out, Are You Afraid of the Dark is simple. Each week, a different Midnight Society member tells a story, which we see play out as a 22-minute horror short before returning to the campfire for a closing beat. Within that framework, though, the show balances a few consistent ingredients. One is the focus on ordinary kids. The protagonists are almost always average youths. They're new kids in town, or their siblings, or their school outsiders, somebody who encounters something supernatural in familiar places like schools, or libraries, or amusement parks, suburban homes, or even wooded areas. Another key ingredient to the show is the paranormal variety. The show ranges across ghosts, demons, magic, cursed objects, aliens, witches, vampires, werewolves, and more. Some episodes adapt urban legends or classic horror tales. Other episodes spin original myths around items like comic books or video games. If it could plausibly ruin a childhood hobby, there was a decent chance that it would get an episode. Another key ingredient are the grounded settings. Production primarily took place around Montreal, Quebec, and in Richmond, British Columbia, giving the series a distinctly Canadian look. Dense forests, older institutional buildings, and slightly off-kilter suburban locations. Many episodes were shot in abandoned houses, or in the woods, or public buildings like schools and libraries. The final and probably key consistent ingredient would be the theme-driven tales. McHale has said that he wanted stories about real kids facing real challenges that existed before the supernatural things showed up, with the horror elements of the show amplifying those problems rather than replacing them. Episodes often layer fears about family, bullying, grief, or identity on top of the monsters. Most stories have some kind of resolution and a happy, or at least survivable ending. A classic example is The Tale of the Lonely Ghost, where a dead child is finally reunited with her elderly mother. But the show is willing to go much, much darker. The Tale of the Dark Music, for example, suggests that a boy will continue to feed people to an unseen monster in exchange for anything he wants. And The Tale of Vampire Town ends with an obsessive goth protagonist becoming the very thing that he romanticized. That unpredictable combination of comfort and genuine unease would become the hallmark of the show. Each member of the Midnight Society has a personality and a rough thematic lane that they usually stayed in. Gary, played by Ross Hull, was the founder of the original Midnight Society. He's bookish and fascinated with magic and Houdini. His stories often center on cursed or enchanted objects that wreak havoc in the wrong hands, frequently involving the recurring magic shop owner, Mr. Sardo.
They call me Sato. No, mister. Accent on the dough.
Sorry, won't happen again. Betty Ann, played by Rain Pear Cool, is enthusiastic about the bizarre and twisted. Her tales often feature otherworldly forces trying to break into our world or drag characters into theirs, with Twilight Zone-style twist endings that imply that the threat is never really over. Kiki, played by Jodie Ressler, is a spunky tomboy who often mocks others and tells stories about the dangers of deceit, carelessness, and history repeating itself, oftentimes centering characters of color in early seasons. Frank Moore, played by Jason Alisharan, is a punkish teen whose stories often involve the recurring villain Dr. Vink. He's a mad scientist/sorcerer figure with unique endeavors. Tucker, played by Daniel DeSanto, is also Gary's younger brother. Initially, he's bratty, but the later leader of the revived society. His stories tend to feature strained family relationships that strengthen under supernatural pressure, often with characters accidentally unleashing evil. Sam, played by Joanna Garcia, is shy, with a mutual crush on Gary. Her stories typically leaned into themes of love and devotion that can endure even beyond death. Kristen, played by Rachel Blanchard, loves ghost stories and fairy tales, often dressing up or bringing props with her to the campfire. Her tales usually involve ghosts with unfinished business who need help from the living. And David, played by Nathaniel Moreau, he's quiet, introspective, and he tells stories about unresolved past wrongs and the darkness inside of ordinary people, often reflecting his feelings about Kristen. Later additions like Stig, Quinn, Vange, Andy, and Megan in the 1999 revival, and entirely new lineups in the 2019 to 2022 reboot preserve the idea. Storytellers with distinct emotional concerns shaping the types of horror that they share. For a show that's technically an anthology, Are You Afraid of the Dark develops its own mini-mythology through recurring characters. For example, Sardo, played by Richard Dumont.
That's Sardo. No, mister. Accent.
I know, I told you I got this.
It's finally driven me out of my mind.
He's the owner of Sardo's Magic Mansion, a magic shop selling prized items that often turn out to be genuinely enchanted. He's defined by running gags, asking, "Have you seen our vomit?"
Have you seen our vomit?
When pushing novelty items, and instantly taking whatever money that a kid has while claiming, "But I'm losing on the deal."
But I'm losing on the deal.
He appears mostly in Gary's stories and later in some of Tucker's and one of David's. There's also Dr. Vink, played by Aaron Tager. He's a physically imposing character who appears as everything from a mad scientist to a sorcerer to an eccentric chef and even a barber. He introduces himself with "Vink's the name, Dr. Vink."
Vink's the name. Dr. Vink.
and then bristles when called Fink with an F, correcting people with Vink with a V. He typically engineers perilous situations, relishing the last laugh, but in The Tale of Cutter's Treasure, he actually allies with Sardo and the protagonists. These recurring elements give the series a loose, shared universe feeling. If you watched enough episodes, you started connecting Sardo's shop, Vink's schemes, some of the Zebo references, and even some specific callbacks that made the anthology feel like more than simply isolated tales. The original series aired 5 seasons of 13 episodes each, totaling 65 episodes, from August 15th of 1992 to February 3rd of 1996. It ran on Nickelodeon's Snick Block in the US and on Family Channel and then YTV in Canada, with reruns continuing into the early 2000s. In 1999, Nickelodeon and Family Channel revived the show for 2 more seasons, commonly counted as Seasons 6 and 7, which ran from February 6, 1999 to June 11 of the year 2000. Tucker returned from the original cast, now older and leading a new Midnight Society lineup with fresh stories and a slightly updated tone. After years as a nostalgia property, living on DVDs, digital volume releases, and late-night rerun blocks like The 90s Are All That, Nickelodeon greenlit a new limited series reboot. This second revival premiered on October 11th of 2019 as Are You Afraid of the Dark? Carnival of Doom, a 3-episode miniseries centered on a new Midnight Society and an evil ringmaster named Mr. Top Hat. It was successful enough to earn 2 more themed seasons, Curse of the Shadows, which was 6 episodes in early 2021, and Ghost Island, which ran for 4 episodes during the summer of 2022, each with its own cast and setting. The franchise extended into other media as well, including a 1994 PC game, Are You Afraid of the Dark? The Tale of Orpheo's Curse. They also had a planned live-action film announced in 2017, but that was later removed from Paramount's schedule. In March of 2024, the 2019 to 2022 revival seasons were removed from Paramount Plus as part of a shift toward content with, quote, mass global appeal, leaving parts of the series scattered across physical media, digital purchases, and intermittent streaming availability. Critics and fans have credited Are You Afraid of the Dark with doing far more than just giving kids a Saturday night scare. Writers have noted how its protagonists were vulnerable and relatable. Outcasts, new kids, rival siblings, children dealing with divorce or even death, all encountering the supernatural in settings that looked a lot like their own suburban lives. McHale has said that he wanted to show kids taking charge of difficult situations, suggesting to viewers that they weren't powerless in their own problems. The series has also been praised for its diversity, both on-screen and behind the scenes. DJ McHale emphasized including a wide range of characters and stories, regardless of sex, race, or age, resisting stereotypes and normalizing interracial relationships and varied backgrounds. In 1996, the show earned an NAACP Image Award nomination, and McHale has pointed out that in the first season alone, about half the scripts focused on female characters and were written by women, helping to cultivate a generation of female horror fans who saw themselves as protagonists. Today, Are You Afraid of the Dark occupies a very specific and nostalgic niche because it gave kids a ritual. Gather, tell the story, face the monster, douse the fire. It's kept the campfire burning through revivals, VHS releases, DVDs, games, and streaming platforms. And for anyone who sat in the glow of that TV light and hearing submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society, one very important question still lingers. Are you afraid of the dark? Thank you so much for watching this Are You Afraid of the Dark retrospective video that I put together. Doing the research for this episode and, personally rewatching this series from start to finish over the last several years as an adult is truly such a blast. I love every second of the show. Yeah, some episodes are great, and yeah, some are not great, but that's okay. It's life, man. There's 7 seasons technically, and then, the reboots, but they can't all be the tale of the dead man's float, right? Only one can be that. I want to invite you to leave a comment of whatever series or episode you want me to cover next, and consider joining the Patreon for special perks, including seeing your name in the credits at the end of every video.